Welcome to Future Riches Podcast. I'm Barbara Ginty. I'm your host. I'm also a certified financial planner. And today we have a very special episode. For the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, we are having my Uncle Jack, come on to talk about his experience as a firefighter during the 9/11 attacks. So hi, Uncle Jack.
How you doing, Bob?
Good. How are you?
Doing great.
So maybe we could start out with giving a little background so the listeners can get to know you a little better. But you started out actually as a police officer and then switched to the fire department, right?
Yeah, correct. I went on the police department October 63, and I switched to the fire department on November 29th, 1969.
Okay, so 6 years as a police officer.
Yes.
Wasn't really your thing, though.
No, I as I told you, I did 6 years, never gave up a ticket.
You
I
weren't
was proud of that. They weren't.
So then you became a firefighter, and you had a long career, and then at a certain point you went into the union, which is
I came on. I was assigned to Engine 42 in the South Bronx. That's when the Bronx was burning. 70s. So we were
the 70s in New York were really bad.
Yeah, especially in the South Bronx. We did like 9,000 runs that year, which was actually more runs than I don't remember, but it was in the paper. And like the combined departments of like 6 or 7 southwestern states.
Oh my God.
All of their departments.
And wasn't that when the time frame? And so did you not use oxygen then? Wasn't it different?
Well, yeah, that came out. The scuba tanks, they're actually just air, they're not oxygen.
Oh,
but
okay.
The thing was, we were doing probably averaging somewhere near 25 runs a night. So if you used it, you'd lose them. I mean, you had 4 of them on, 5 of them. So when we'd go to fires, one guy would carry the mask. It was in a box. And if it was a situation that we had to make some real back room and there was no other way to make it, one guy would mask up to do it. Because what would happen is if you used them, they'd be gone by the first one, and then you'd have no masks left. So we didn't use them.
So you didn't use them at all? Because isn't that standard now that you use them?
Oh yeah, they use them for. I don't. It's probably right, but I see them doing it at car fires. I mean, we go to buildings where a lot of them were abandoned buildings. Most of them were, and there'd be 2 or 3 floors on fire. And you learn how to live in a fire situation. I worry about young firemen that they've done nothing but the mask, nothing. So if you get into a situation in a fire where you can't see, what you see on television, the movie isn't what it's like. It's just pitch black and extremely hot. I mean, you're laying flat in your stomach, crawling in. If you were to stand up, you'd be dead. I mean, that's how hot it got. So the thing is, if one of these young guys got trapped, and that happened a lot, and the mask ran out, there were different ways that we learned. I mean, almost so that you could open a refrigerator. Yeah, it would be okay there. You could actually suck air out of couches and cushions and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it didn't happen. But the thing was, these guys were the best in the world at what they did. I mean, there was no equal. Not just mine, all of the firehouses there. So if you got trapped, if you get there and they say there's somebody trapped in the back or a child or something, you as we say, you get low and you go. You just tear in there. A lot of times there were cases where you couldn't get back, so you would have to depend on the guys with you. Say, I hope they're going to put this out, but it worked. But you learned how to live in very, very precarious situations.
Well, yeah, I would think 9,000 fires in 1 year would give you.
It was around there. It might be a little less, a little more, but it was around that amount.
And so that's when that's how you started your career. So you switched from the cops and went through the burning of the Bronx, which is for a lot of our listeners who probably never heard of it, the city was really bad in the 70s. And as you said, the Bronx was basically on fire the entire time.
They actually made a television show that they had me wired up, I think it was called it originally was going to be called The Bronx is Burning. This is when I first made a lieutenant. Bill Moyers made it, like newsman, and they changed it to The Fire Next Door because Bronx is Burning, I guess, was a little too flashy. So that's how it went.
And then fast forward. So you were a firefighter for how many years before you went? You went into the union, and that.
Yeah,
And
I went in the union in 1988 or 89, but I still did my night tours. The way the chart was, you did 2 day tours and you were off, and then you did 2 night tours.
Okay.
The night tours were 15 hours a piece, the day tours were 9. So when I went in, I had excusal for the 2 day tours because I'd be at the union office, and then at night I would go to firehouses, which I was glad. I actually like going there. But eventually I got elected to be the vice president, and then I had full excusal, so I was only doing the union job.
And when did that start?
Gee, I guess around somewhere in like 93, somewhere in there, I don't remember the exact years, but 93.
And the purpose of the union was to protect the firemen, right?
Correct.
For their
safety.
Safety.
You would negotiate, contracts. You negotiate contracts for the medical coverages and things like that.
Okay. And so where were you the morning of 9/11?
I was in the office. What happened? That was primary day.
Okay.
Primaries. It was a Tuesday. So I stayed over that night. I slept on a couch in the office because I had to coordinate all the political action that we were doing for all the candidates in all the 5 boroughs. So what happened was I would get up around 6:30 in the morning to take a shower, because then the office people would come in. Mm-hmm. And one of the girls came in and said to me, "A plane just hit the World Trade Center. We're 1 block away. We're on Broadway. That's on Church Street, right around the corner." So I assumed at that time it's going to be like a small plane, a Pike covers.
Right, because for people who aren't listening, that had happened before, where a small plane had hit a building. Like a small plane.
Yeah, that happened there somewhere else. A plane that actually hit the Empire State Building, a bomber. I don't even remember. I guess it was during World War II, but that didn't knock down the building. Without going into that was a different construction. That's called skeletal construction. So if you look at buildings being built and you see the iron going up, it looks like square boxes. Mm-hmm. That's how buildings were built. The World Trade Center was built in a way that didn't come to New York City code. They called it core construction, where the core of the building, think of a square, that would be where the elevators are, mm-hmm. outside walls, and that would be the barren walls. So that they built that, they did a floor a day when they built it. So how they built it was core, they would just prefab everything on the ground and just put it in. So there were no structures. So when that plane went through, there was nothing to prevent it from going completely through till it hit the core.
And how did you know about the construction? Is that something that all firemen knew, how buildings are
built?
Yeah,
so when you study, that's one of the major parts you study is called building construction, because by learning it, you learn how fire progresses up through, I don't even know what you would call them, but pipe recesses. Mm-hmm. If you've ever been in an apartment where a closet is in the corner, that's a recess, because if you take the ceilings out of them, it'll go right to the roof. And to give you an example, if you had a fire in the basement, the first engine truck would go in there. The roof man, the next would go to the top floor, because it's in the basement. The fire will break out on the top floor because all the heat will go up through those recesses, hit what they call the cock loft. That's the space between the ceiling and the top floor, and get in there and expands horizontally. So it's very knowledgeable. You don't study it in the fire academy. When you go, and when you knew, you called a probie and you're with the officer. And every fire we went to, after it was over, we would talk about how did it go up? Was it this? How could we have done this better?
Okay. You did like a reconnaissance, like went over everything.
Yeah, you go over. It wasn't like a fault thing. You back at the firehouse, you had coffee, and you'd ask, well, where'd you cut the ceiling and why did you? And not question him on it, just what he saw and why he made that decision. And then
Right.
go, oh, could we have done that better? And I know this can get boring. I mean, you cut the ceiling to get the heat out. You get a good roof man that knows what to do. He'll cut the roof. It's usually like about a 6x4 or 6x3. And if he cuts it right, he can get 3 rooms. If I feel like I'm teaching school. If you go to the parapet of the wall and go back 10 feet, that's about the middle size of a room, 10 to 12 feet. So if you can cut it, you can maybe get 2 rooms and maybe sometimes makes it vent much quickly. So
So you could save 2 rooms.
yeah, it's just to get, when you crawl into these things, when you get there and you're crawling in, you love to hear the saws going on the roof because you can't breathe. You're holding your breath or you're on the floor trying to suck anything off the bottom. And you hear the saws, as soon as they pull that roof, a lot of that will lift.
Got it.
So
Okay.
that's why.
So the morning of 9/11, you're in the union office, which is right around the corner from
Yeah.
the World Trade Center.
Right.
And someone says to you,
One of the girls said to me, a plane hit. So I said, oh, I better get around there. And I come out and turn the corner and there's 1,000 people rushing up like a mob, a whole street full of people. And I look up and I can see where the plane went into the world, to the tower. And it went out on a slant, like a 45-degree angle. And you could tell then it was a huge airline. You've seen that. And I remember to this day, every time I see a day that's completely cloudless, I always think there's like the World Trade Center. There wasn't a cloud.
it was
And
a beautiful morning, right?
it was a beautiful morning. And I remember thinking, gee, this guy could have put that plane down in the harbor if he just, inched it over a couple of feet. So at that point, I thought it was an accident, a plane going down. And as I'm walking down the street, I look over on the left, there's a church. It's been in all the
movies
programs and stuff. Yeah. And there's a cemetery there, a graveyard. And I see the coping from one of the engines. That's the metal cover that goes over the engines.
Yeah.
As I get to the corner, there's 2 FBI guys there. They have FBI jackets on. And I just mentioned to them, I said, the coping for that engine is in the graveyard. And they applauded me. And a guy in a suit who must have been their boss, an older man, came over and said, what? He told him, get over there and mark it. So now I'm standing on the corner looking at it. I'm going through the plaza that's out in front.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the second plane hit. And that came from the south. So I'm on the north side of that.
Yep.
Of that town. So I didn't see the plane. I just thought like every certain amount of floors are called HAVs. That's where they have the air conditioning, heating.
Yep.
And I thought maybe someone put, explosives and blew it up. That's how it looked. But people were coming down, on fire and stuff like that. That's when I realized, well, we got something else going on here. And basically, people were not trapped. They were behind the glass doors. They were doors that
Turnstiles, yeah.
Turnstile, yeah. And if you didn't get them open, they were going to press against it. So there were other fine. We got that open. We got people.
And this was on which building you went in to help get the doors?
That would have been at that time. It would have been the Northern Tower.
Okay.
Yeah, and I get through, and people are going out.
Are you down. With a union? You're not in uniform. Did you just have a fire?
I had a jacket, which we had said fire, New York City fire officer.
Okay.
So, or else they wouldn't let you in the building. But right. I go through the building and I see still people, but they're coming out in an orderly fashion, and there's people directing them. Beneath the entrance level is a mall, with stores. I'm sure you've been there. So I feel, let me get down there. And then there's trains coming in from Jersey. Yep. And I'm feeling this is like around 9 o'clock, 9:30, somewhere in there, 9:30. There's people coming in. If they've been on trains, they have no idea.
Right.
So as I get down into the mall, I run into a chief, a guy, Dennis Devlin. Dennis had been a fireman for me in the Bronx. So I see him and we just like look at each other. I don't remember, you passed something about, well, this is bad or something like that. And he has a bunch of fire with him. I said, look, I'm going to head over to the lobby and see if I can get up there. I know all you could hear were fire trucks coming.
Right.
He goes, you know what? Let me take another quick walk around. Oh no, we go down there to the trains, and there's a train in, and it isn't open, and there's nobody on the platform. So there's, I guess the guy conductor, he said, no, take the plane, take the train back. It went back to Hoboken, and then we come up, and that's when I said I'm going to go over. He said, I'm going to take a sweet mixture. Never saw Dennis again. To this day, they haven't found Dennis or those guys. The reason I tell you, I had just pure luck that day that everybody that was with me got killed, except me. And it was nothing to do, which I think, I was in Ireland, New Zealand, explaining all this stuff is just pure luck. People would say to me, well, you had it had nothing to do with that. It was just luck.
You made a right and he made a left.
Just like if I had said, all right, I'll take a walk with you, or I'll help you, so I wouldn't have come back. If he had come with me, he would have been alive at least for that. But that's just how it broke. Nobody did anything wrong, or I did something right, just the way it worked.
So you were underground then when you said to Dennis, he said he's going to take these firemen and go this way, and you said, I'm going to do another sweep that way.
I'm going to go over to where the building, the high-rise building, right? We're under the building, but you got to go through a big long lobby to get over to the actual building, as we would call it.
Yep.
And so I go through there. I find some people. I get them out. One of the doors exploded off the elevator because I guess the gasoline for the plane must have come down, and then whatever ignited blew one of the doors off. I get a whole bunch of people there. They're looking to go.
Where were you sending people? Because you didn't really know what was going on.
Yeah, no, I knew how to get them out of the building. These people are coming down, and it's something, if anybody can get anything useful out of what I say today, people will always leave a building the same way they came in. They will always do it.
That's just psychology, right? Like you always go back to the way, because you have always taught me, because I went and worked in New York City after, was you always taught me to identify the exits when you first get onto a floor.
That's exactly right. Because we did things later. And that was one of the, going to a floor. One was, I think, sitting back. I had them say, okay, everybody go out. Everybody went to the door. People were leaving to go to a door that's a floor away when there was an exit box. So they were just to get people out. No big deal. They went out. And now I come out of the building, and now there's hundreds of firemen, trucks all over the place. And commissioner, who was the deputy commissioner, Fiend was there, Pete Gansey, who was chief of department, and a guy, Timmy Stackpole. And Timmy had gotten hurt in Brooklyn, a building collapsed. Well, he was in there, he got burnt really bad. So he was working his way back as an aide to, I think, to Billy Fitt, to Chief Commissioner Fiend. So as I come out, I come over, I see Pete Gansey, and Pete says to me, Pete and I were finding together in the Bronx. He said to me, Jack, I need you to stay here. We got to get this under control, because guys were just showing up and going in. And if you don't have some sort of supervision or setup, so you know where people are if you had to go get them. So meanwhile, fine, and they all want to get in. They want to go to work. And we're just saying, look, just back down here. We get everybody to you're all going to get in, And there's, I think it's called the World Financial Building, the one with the glass top. Yeah. And it was a garage there. So they're backing into the garage, because if we get them there, there's one way out. When I say controlling, Pete would be controlling. As I get there, we have a board set up outside. I go turn to, and there's a girl from the FBI. I don't know what she looked like. I know she had a red ponytail, and I look up and the building's coming down, and it looked like what you'd see like a mushroom cloud, and it's just sliding along. It like someone sliding the hands down.
Did it feel like it was slow motion when you?
Oh yeah. I don't know if it was slow motion, but you just react. And I see it, and she's like looking straight up. So I go and I grab her around the shoulder, the waist, whatever, and we get into the garage. And now I can hear stuff, debris hit. I realize we got to get down or we're going to get killed here. And there was an SUV parked against a wall. And when you learn about collapse, the strongest part is the bearing wall, right? So I feel, well, if we dive in here between this SUV and the wall, and then the thing hits, and you hear it hit. The sound.
What did it sound like?
People ask that all the time. It just like being in the middle of an explosion, like people say, like a freight train. It was just unbelievably loud and vibrant. And there was
I feel like in movies they say after that you can't hear, you just hear ringing because it's so.
No, it wasn't that. But I remember, like, if I saw this girl, I couldn't tell you what she looked like. I never saw her face. She was down. I got down, pushed down, got a thing, and then I just waited. Now the garage went down. I get down the bottom of the garage, and there's people there, and I'm in like a lobby, and there's like doors all over, like 5 doors, 4 doors. I don't remember. And we're trying to figure out which one goes to the financial center because we can't get out the way we came in. So anyway, they find a way. I open the door and I see a rope tied to a doorknob. That's how you search large areas. We call it a search rope, or the same rope you go off a roof with. Okay. But you stretch it so you have a way to find your way back. Okay. Because at this point, it's pitch black. I mean, you can't see your hand, but it's full of, I guess, not smoke, but ash, the cloud. And there's Jimmy McGowan, who's fine. So I said, Jimmy, I think we have people in here. So I said, I'll go along the rope and we'll see what's there. And he wants to know. I said, Jimmy, you got to stay by the door in case I can't find my way back. So I go along this rope. I'm yelling, anybody here, nobody here. Oh, I see 2 firemen when I first go in. So I said, just put your hand out, we'll take you back. And they would have found it themselves. So I get near the end, I'm yelling, nobody. Now I think I hear something. And I yell at it. Now I hear somebody yelling. So now I have to leave the rope to go find this person. And you try to go in direct straight lines because you can do that coming back, rather than on tangents. Long story short, I crawl into like a hallway and somebody grabs me, a huge guy, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs, we're gonna die, and all that. And what you learn is don't say anything, because after a while they go, do you have anything you want to say? So I just said to him, basically, look, if you shut up and get you out of here, but if you're gonna panic, you're not coming out. Oh, the reason I even bring that, I go along the rope, find the rope, get out, go to the door, and he was a black guy, huge. I think he had a badge. I think it might have been the mayor's office, but I'd say he was 6'4", 300 pounds, big guy. And he's got me by the arm. So we go, I find the door, we go World Financial Center. And this is what I think I told you one time, where I'm not thinking. I start to go across and some of the glass lets go, but it was 70 feet from me. So that's when I realized you got to start paying attention here. And anyway, I get this guy out. There's a big plaza back there, building, and he's bleeding. Nothing a Band-Aid wouldn't handle, but he won't let. I said, no, just get me in. But the reason I tell you, like Gansey and Fee and Stackpole that I was with, because I got delayed, I'm now behind them.
Right.
When you come out, the Hudson River is behind you, and the West Side Highway, where the buildings are I don't know how far it's a city block. They're long city block. So I see them, and they make a right-hand turn. At this time, I don't know how much came down. I don't know if just the top of the building came down.
Right.
So I saw.
So you're taking this man to an ambulance, or you're trying to.
He's in an ambulance, but that delayed me because so when I get up to the corner, now the other tower, the North Tower, that first one hit was the last one to come down. So Finn and Gansey and a couple of them have already gone. Now I see the rubble. I realize, that building's down. As I start to go into the second building, the one that's standing, a guy, Tommy Fitzpatrick, again, I worked with him in the Bronx, so he was an aide to the commissioner. He's yelling something from in front of the building. He's directly under it. I can't hear him. So
they had a command station, is that correct? So they were
no,
all
well, that was crushed under the first one.
okay.
So he was, I don't know what he was going to say. So I start trotting over to him to see what the plan is. As I get to him, now that building comes down. I'm directly under this one. So, and again, I made a mistake here. I start to run. I should have run back exactly how I came because there was buildings there. I had started to run up the West Side Drive. And as soon as I did, I just made a major mistake. But I knew I couldn't outrun it. So I dove onto a fire truck. And then the whole thing came down. And I was buried in there.
You were buried in there. That's where, so the first tower you were buried in the garage with the redheaded FBI agent who you don't know who she is.
Yeah.
And then from there, you got a gentleman out of the rubble into an ambulance, which delayed you, and you got
right. Or else, when they went up and made that turn to go to where they went, when the second building came down, there was nowhere for them to go.
Right.
And I know he actually got decapitated. I mean, it was pretty bad where they were.
So luckily, you took this gentleman that you found in the.
If I hadn't found him,
yeah,
I would have been right next to him. So
right.
no one has made mistakes except me that I know of. The one in the world, financial, walking under the glass. I don't know what I was thinking. And in this thing, I remember.
So you got down to the first building, which was the second to collapse, late because of helping a man get into an ambulance.
Correct. If I hadn't run into him, I would have been with Pete Gansey.
And what I think is really interesting is you've never met these people since.
You mean which people? Oh, that guy that I got?
FBI no. Or the guy from the ambulance. Like you've never seen him since.
No.
Yeah, that to me, that's.
No, there was no reason to. I mean,
Yeah, but it's just interesting that you went through this experience together and then never found each other after. But anyway, so now we get to you're heading back to see your colleague at the base basically of the first building hit, second building to come down, and that's to come down, and you take off running up the West Side Highway.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes down.
I realized I'm not going to get that far. You know, I don't know how far I got. And I see the rig. I figure, well, I'll dive under here. It's the only chance now, you know. And I'm under a rig. And you've seen pictures of how these rigs were crushed.
Mm-hmm.
The rear tires, double tires on both sides, just, I don't know, weeks later went back. The only tires that weren't blown were the ones I was between. The front was all crushed.
So you went under the back of the rig, the back of the truck.
Yeah. So, and his rigs parked one next, behind the other. And I remember just that I remember hearing the sound that like the people, I guess like somebody dropping boxcars on you, and the ground is shaking, and I don't know if it's the ground or the rig is shaking, but it stops. And I remember honest to God, thinking, am I alive? Because again, when you saw the cloud, I'm in that now under this rig. I remember touching my finger to my eyes saying, okay. And now saying to myself, all right, start paying attention here, So now, I don't know how long a period of time I figured. I remember thinking there had been a story about a collapse in Mexico City, an earthquake, where they found a baby 13 days later. So I said, well, I remember that. I said, well, you might have to be in here a while. But I figured, all right, let me try.
Are you by yourself?
Yes, I'm by myself then. They could have actually, I was by myself, but you could have been right next to me. I wouldn't have been able to see you. I couldn't actually see my hand if I touched my nose. That's because it's completely black because of that cloud taken in. So I remember thinking, man, it's getting a little hot in here. So I crawl out under the rig. I get behind through an opening, and now I'm behind under another rig. As I'm crawling, I bump into a guy, and I hear his mask. He's breathing. The Scott mask is called. So I say, "You okay?" He's, whatever. All right. You hurt? Okay.
But you can't see each other.
No, can't see him. I can touch him, and he's like, he has the mask on. So I had said to him, it might be a good idea to take that off because you might need it if it gets really bad, what I was doing, and he was doing, you put the shirt or anything over and try to breathe through the shirt to keep the dust. But anyway, we're there, and uh, again, I don't remember exactly how this went, but he wanted to go, and I said, no, let's just wait a little while, because when glass collapses and the glass pops out,
Mhm.
it's not gonna stay up there for a long period of time. It's like if you flip it, it's like frisbees when it.
Okay.
And I said, let's
And
just,
that's dangerous to breathe in glass.
yeah. Well, I was worried about if we crawled out and this glass came down on you.
Got it. Okay.
So we were in there a bunch, and then we talked. And now it's starting to get a heat blast, like someone opened the door of an oven, and we realized we got to go. Now the thing is,
How long?
what's north?
How long do you think you were under the fire trucks for?
Uh, some around 40 minutes, maybe. Some people said it a little longer, but a period of time like that. But
Okay.
I remember thinking, all right, we got to make sure we're going north, because south is into the towers.
Yeah. And it was just you and one other person then, just this
Yeah.
one fireman.
Yeah. And I've seen him. He's a captain today. I've seen him. A red-haired guy. He's the second red-haired guy.
Another
Uh,
redhead. Okay.
So anyway, I said, as long as we keep our hand on the barrier of the wall, our right hand, then we have to be going north, because you can get turned around because some of it was rubble. And then anyway, we get out of it. And then
How long did you have to dig out? Because wasn't there rubble?
parts of it had to move stuff, but it wasn't like you're a lot of digging. When so many cleared, you could see light in certain areas, so you went towards that. But the thing, we get out, we go up, and to this day, I don't remember this at all. I'm in the office, I don't know, a week later. Our office, we didn't go. We were up on Park Avenue using the lawyers' offices. And a guy calls me one note, and he says, I'm calling to thank you. You got me. And I said, no, it wasn't me. He said, yeah, it was you. I said, it certainly was. I'm telling you, it wasn't me. Debris had backed up, and he was behind the debris in the entrance to a building.
Mm-hmm.
Went by, he was digging out and had blood. He said, do you remember telling me to get in the ambulance? I said, I remember saying to somebody, everybody wanted to go right back. I remember saying to him, well, just go in and get cleared, and you come back. I remember that, but I don't remember ever getting up at all. To this day, I don't remember. And then, like I say, the rest of the day, we just went back, hopefully find somebody.
Yeah, so you and this other fireman dug your way out of being under the fire trucks, headed north.
Yeah.
And then once you had a bearing on everything, you went back down to see if you could dig people out of the rubble.
Everybody did, but we're all in a certain area. And I'll tell you, the fire department's amazing. They immediately, our chief department's gone, commission's gone, Bill Feen, and Danny Nigro, who's the commissioner, he was there. He was a chief at that time. It just, everybody got together, and I remember saying to Danny Nigro, damn, I guess you're in charge here. So we just all started going on the pot. We called it the pile, just to try to see if we could get anybody. Around 4 o'clock, those guys came out. Chief Pricciata, what's the captain's name? Okay. Anyway, they came out around 4 o'clock. They were the ones that saved that black woman that was in a wheelchair. They carried it down on those flights. So they were the only ones to come out. And no one ever came out again. I just remember the horror. You looked at the bodies all over the place.
I was going to ask you what was the worst part?
You know what it was? No one ever when I first got there, was watching the people jump, because any fire I had ever been at, we had people trapped, and we got 90 some odd % of them. At least you could do something. You could say, you could do something. You could try to get up to the fire floor, whatever. I remember thinking, there's nothing you can do. And I'll tell you, something that's never been published. I would say 80% of them were women, because who comes in the office early? Not the executives, the secretaries. So this was playing it right before 9 o'clock. And I remember a whole group coming out holding hands, and they were all women. And, you would hear things like, it sounded like thump, and that was a body hit. You hear somebody go, oh man, there's some more. But I remember looking up and they came out and they were holding hands. And I remember it's like one woman I saw, she was pretty close coming down. Uh, I think I could have, if someone showed me a picture, I might have been able to recognize it. But I remember she had like a gypsy skirt, if that's what you call it, with a wide band, long. And I remember the flow, and she got cut in half. She got hit one of the barriers. So it was horrible, what was going on. You don't expect to see that.
No, and I feel like that's something that people talk about, people being trapped in the building, but I don't think you hear a lot of people talking about, because it's gory and gruesome and hard to hear, but that there were so many people jumping out of the building.
They had no choice. That when I was speaking, I spoke in Ireland. That was at a soccer game, and on the TV station I did Good Morning America there, Good Morning Ireland, I guess. And they would say, well, why would they jump? I said, because you don't have a choice. I mean, if I told you stand on this line, and if you don't move, I'll give you $1 million, and I put a cigarette on your back, you're moving. You just can't stand that. Even 5 in that jump on Black Sunday, the 5 guys that jump, you don't have a choice. It's not a choice.
Do you think that was the worst part of it, was seeing?
To me,
that?
it probably wasn't the worst part, with so many people dying. But I just remember that was the first time I was ever in a position, even on the cops, I could do nothing. I could stand and watch it. I couldn't do anything
about it.
Yeah.
What would be, this is a question from one of our listeners, what would be one thing you wish you could go back and tell yourself about that day?
Really, there's not much I could tell. It happened to us. It
Right.
wasn't a result of some action I had taken, saying, gee, I should have gone a different way to work today. In some ways, I was glad that I was there,
Mm-hmm.
because at least I tried to do something. We tried,
Right.
but it's just unless you were there, it's something that it's hard to explain. There was a smell to it. That afternoon, it got really hot too. I remember how hot it was. And then, that was, like I say, the 11, we were there. Like, I stayed there till Sunday. So did everybody else. I don't want to keep saying I. We slept on floors in buildings because we kept digging, trying to find. I remember that happened Tuesday. I went home Sunday. But everybody else did. So, we were just trying, and guys saying, what do you hear? And, then, and I was there for all the lies that Whitman, when she was there and said, oh, you can breathe this air. I mean, we even knew. I mean, I remember we were a whole group of us standing around and just, without saying this thing, we do this all the time. Don't tell me you can breathe this, But I mean, as a result, my lungs are shot. That's I was in. I kept trying to stay. I didn't want to leave, but when they finally caught up to me, I mean, but just for my injuries, I was given disability for the cervical spine, lumbar spine, left hip, and my lungs. So.
Well, because how old were you when 9/11?
Yeah.
You were almost at retirement.
I was what?
Weren't you almost to retirement?
Yeah. Oh, I could have retired 20 years. I had to get out when I got out. I was probably in my late 50s.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
And they have mandatory retirement, right, at 65? Or
yeah, 65. Yeah. I did actually the most time of anybody. I came on at 21 and got out just around 66. So if you count police time.
Yeah, if you count the police time, 40 years.
Somebody even asked me that. They asked me that on television. I think in New Zealand, and they said, why did you do so much time? I said, because I'm a bit of a moron and I don't have any other skills, which I don't. No.
So since I think the story is incredible. Like to hear firsthand what.
No, it's no more incredible than everybody else's. I mean.
No, but just all the stories that have come out of there for the people that were there. And I can't believe we're coming up on the 20th reunion. And what's interesting, and you've talked to my boyfriend's nephew, but he was so interested to have talked to somebody who lived through it because he's learning about it in a history book. He had right, there's a whole generation of children who didn't live through this, where they're just reading about
Right.
it in a book.
Yeah. And I just hope they keep the memory of it alive. I mean, we lost 343 firemen that day. That's just firemen. And I knew most of them, and some of them very, very well. Like Father Judge, the priest that was killed, him and I were very close because he was the chaplain, and when firemen get hurt, he would be there. He became, well, he wouldn't want it. He got really sick from working so hard. He worked with the AIDS kids and the homeless, and he was in a hospital. We went to the rectory where he on 33rd Street, and he didn't have a bed. He gave the bed away. He had a chair. That's how he slept. And just the way he was. He's the only person, and when I did 1 year in the seminary, he's the only person could actually talk to God. And to give you an example, when the plane went down, TWA, who's on that beach, Father Judge. When Denkins went to South Africa with apartheid, he took Father Judge. When Koch went to Israel, took Father Judge. When Clinton had to see counseling people, it was Father Judge. People know he was the most amazing guy, extremely funny.
So what do you think we can do to best honor those that were lost, firemen and everyone that was lost that day?
It's just keep them in your memory, your parent, to realize, the second tower I was going in when it came down. I remember when I was going there, one of the chiefs, I think, I'm trying to remember. I think it was Pete Hayden. He became chief of the department. He was the one you heard on the radio, and I'll tell you about this, debating the guy from Germany. He gave you I need everybody out. We're going to get hit again. They thought that plane coming that went down in Pennsylvania. They must have said, "Look, you got." And all you could hear on the radio, one was Patty Brown. He was the most decorated guy in the fire department, phenomenal guy. And I recognized his voice, but all you could hear guys saying, "Chief, I can't leave. I have people here. I can't leave. I have people." So all of those guys were killed. Without giving this guy's name, when I was in Ireland on one of the shows, he called up, and he was a professor from Germany. He had a name that had like 25 letters in it. And he said, well, most of the firemen wouldn't have died if they followed their orders. And he brought up about that order and I said, yeah, I was there for that. So he said, and he was arrogant about it. And as he was talking, I was getting more and more annoyed, thinking, hey, wait a minute, these guys died doing, and you're going to. Anyway, he went on about if he had followed orders and this, doing that. I said, and I do this. When I don't like people, I change their name. So I was calling him Chowder. So I go, hey, Chowder, I said, let me ask you this, Chowder. If all those firemen, according to you, should have turned to these people and said, sorry, we got to leave you here. I'm sorry, you got to die, and left, you'd be criticizing them now because they left. And he go, well, now this isn't kind. I said to him, maybe that's why you lost World War II. You were too anxious to go. And that's where it ended. He hung up. But it annoyed me that who was he to criticize what guys were doing? Yeah.
Right. So what is the number one? So I think the best way we can probably serve for everyone's memory is to keep the memory alive, right? So that people know what happened. And then
say September 11th, say a prayer for them and their families. That was the other hard part with the union. Now I had to go visit the families, without going, we give them a check for $10,000 right away so they can do it. And I remember it was a lieutenant from the squad in Brooklyn. I went and I was talking to the wife, and a little boy came up and said to me, oh, my daddy's a fireman. And I was there. That hurt. we had 93 officers killed that day. So we broke it up among guys. So I had 11 of them. I did them all in one day. I started at 7 in the morning, go to 7, and I was going to leave, and I just didn't. I knew if I left, I didn't want to come back and do it, so I just did it till about 11 o'clock that night, just because I didn't want to do this again. It
Right.
was just horrible.
And that was you going to visit the families of those?
Yeah, to let them know this is what the pensions would be, this is what we'll do if you have any problems. And we had just whatever the program was.
Right.
But the women were unbelievable, unbelievable how they handled. They were remarkable. Yeah, they had family. All of them had family that I had. They had all families.
Nice.
One had a mother and a wife. So. I
Um,
remember the saying, well, he died if he had to die, that's how he'd like to have done it. And someone would say to me, are you okay? And I go, oh, yeah, I'm okay. So.
What's the number one question you get about 9/11?
You get, obviously, they say, people say that, well, they had information on these guys, or they should have had information on these guys going to, you go to take or airplane lessons or flying lessons, and you say, I don't know how to land. I don't need that. That should tell you something.
Right.
Do you resent it? And I don't resent it. I don't think anybody particularly didn't do their job. Sometimes one person hears something, someone hears something else. These are, fate. It's just meant to be. The great thing that came out of it was how close the country was.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I remember it was late at night, I guess, on that night, about 10 or 11 o'clock, and nobody had eaten. Everything was nowhere to go.
Right.
And there was a black woman that had a box with McDonald's in it. And a guy, Rick Arizosa, and he and I worked in 42 Engine together. And he said, yeah, came out, and guys didn't even have any money, because you don't carry money when you're working.
We're working a fire, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what do you, and I thought, he's probably one of the poorest people in the city. She's the first one down here with food. But you saw afterward a lot of celebrities. I remember Liz Taylor ran into her the Friday after that at night. She was walking around lost. But it just like, you couldn't spend anything. To go and eat, you had to go up around 14th Street, Houston Street, somewhere up there, where they wouldn't let me below. People wouldn't take your money to eat.
Oh,
Even
wow.
the restaurant wouldn't take your money. People, anything you need, but it was just how close the country came. And
Right.
now it's without political. I don't know who's right, who's wrong. I don't care. But the way it's so divided today, if you learned anything from what happened, it was how close the country was. You weren't Republican, you weren't Democrat, you weren't white, black, green. Everybody pulled together.
Right.
And 20 years later, it's all not torn apart, but it could be better.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. I think that I do agree. That was probably a silver lining in a horrible, tragic event, was that the country really did come together.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions I was asked, more than recently, was, do I have nightmares or anything like that? And I don't at all. Yeah. I mean, there were days where I'll just sit and think about it. I remember one time saying, did I really go? Was I really there? I knew I was, but I remember, were you really there?
Do you watch any of the documentaries? I think with the 20th anniversary, there's a bunch more that came out, but did you go visit the memorial? Did you watch the documentaries?
I've never been that. Never been that. People ask me that all the time. We left in May, and as we called it, broom clean. That's nobody left in what we call then the pit was, and out. And from that day, I've never been back. I've never been.
And you will never go back.
I think I will, but if I do, I'd go by myself.
Okay.
To see those names, like I say, I worked with those guys, played golf, everything. We did everything together, and they're not here anymore.
Right.
Oh.
Do you watch the documentaries or the movies about it?
I've seen one or two, you know, I've seen the one about the firemen. They came back to the firehouse that day. That was a French crew. You know what it was? There were people, because I was at the union, I knew a lot of the news people
Mhm.
because I did that. And they wanted to interview, and I didn't want that. I remember Dan Rather, I said, we were going back in the afternoon, and he was one, I think it was him. And someone said that it was the Iranians, which was easiest. Someone said, yeah, it was the Iranians. Do you think we should retaliate? Shouldn't we hit them with the missiles? One of the news people said. I said, you're gonna hit some poor guy walking behind a donkey in Iran. He had nothing to do with this, you know? So, and then it was good. The cops moved because when we went back, news people were all over the place.
Oh,
You know,
sure.
you
Yeah.
know, you're trying to do something and they got a camera coming over your shoulder. But I'm glad I was there because I don't know if I would have felt that uh, I should have been there and I wasn't. You get all these crazy things, but I think about it and people ask me things like, do you think you could have done something? There's nothing that would happen to you. But
Well, Uncle Jack, I appreciate you sharing your story with us
I
for.
don't, I don't, and you know that I don't go around telling anybody about at all. But somebody said to you one time, well, if people don't tell a story, will people forget? And I'm sure there's people who are a lot better at this than I am, you know?
Yeah, but yours is a real story. You were there, and I think
Yeah.
as you said, it's important to remember what happened that day and that we keep the memory alive, so that people don't forget. And so I think this is a great way to honor the 20th anniversary.
You know who should be honored of all people? I don't even remember Rusty Staub, the baseball player.
Not
That's
that
an,
into sports.
yeah. Well, anyway, Rusty Staub had started the Police and Fire Widows Foundation.
Oh, okay.
And I was on that because the original fireman that was on the died. So I did a guy, Patty Burns, my guy. And he went all over the country on his own money, raised millions and millions of dollars, and would never wouldn't let you tell anybody. He only passed away about 2 years ago, or a year ago. But over the years, he raised hundreds of $1 million paid for all these kids' college. And it's called the Police Fires Widow Fund. And it's all big people from Wall Street. I think I told you that.
Mhm.
He's very, and we wanted to call it and he wouldn't let us put his name on it. He
Oh, wow.
absolutely did. Nobody did more than Rusty Starr.
Yeah, but a lot of people didn't advertise what they did.
Yeah, a lot but no one did more than he did. Nobody.
That's good to know.
Just amazing. So,
Well, Uncle Jack, thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
yeah, okay. Hope I didn't bore anybody.
No, I'm sure you didn't.
Yeah.
And for all of our lovely listeners, you can find our most up-to-date information on Instagram at the Future Rich Podcast. And thank you for listening in to this 20th anniversary of 9/11 special segment.